Welcome everybody to Books by Adrian. I'm your host Adrian, and this is our guest Adrian. Adrian, I've known you since you were a very, very, very small child. Like very small. This is no longer the case.
Nope.
Tell the people who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Well, like he said, I'm Adrian, another one in the mix. I am in the marketing technology space right now. I'm a marketing automation consultant for one of the big major consulting firms in the country. Basically, what my job is to do, take my clients' marketing strategies and translate it into the communication part of the overall strategy using specific cloud-based tools, and getting them what they need, getting the best out of all the features that are available in those very complex tools.
Nice. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school at the University of Buffalo, did both my undergrad and MBA there, studied marketing both times. That was my concentration in both cases. So learned a lot there. Hopefully I can bring in some valuable information for you guys here today.
Dude, no doubt. So welcome. We're here to talk marketing with everybody today. Adrian is not here in any kind of official capacity. He's just a buddy of mine who happens to know a lot about what we're talking about, and he's going to help us out. So we're going to start first with a little bit of house cleaning around here. I want to remind everybody about the, let me pull it up here so that I can be official. So the flash fiction contest on this channel. We talked about it last week. I just want to remind everybody, 800 words or less in by April 15th. And I'm looking for the most emotional story because this Adrian's brother, a different Adrian, is going to score that short story, that flash fiction, excuse me. And we will do that live on a live stream Sunday. He's going to teach us all about telling stories through music. And then the finished product will be uploaded to the channel as the grand prize for the winner. Everybody, it's 800 words or less. That literally means you can do 300 if you want. Whatever it is, just send me something and let's see what we can do. That's pretty cool, right, dude?
That is pretty awesome. I didn't even know about that. That's fun.
You didn't know about
More
that?
Adrians in the mix. No.
Yeah, he's I'm gonna wrap up the contest on the 15th of April. I'll take the next 2 weeks to like judge the winner, and then I'll send it to him at the beginning of May, and he'll have about a 2-week head start, and then on May 16th he'll be on the channel and doing it live.
That's pretty sweet.
You know,
I'll be tuning in for that one, so the rest of you are gonna have to.
Right on. Right on. Everybody, welcome. Let's get started. We're going to talk marketing. So first off, man, in your vast experience on the subject, what's like the first thing that newbies trying to market themselves or whatever they're working on, what is the first like biggest mistake that these dudes make? Dudes like myself.
Sure.
What is our first downfall right off the bat?
I think a lot of the time it's sort of the way you think about marketing and what marketing is. And there's a bit of truth to what everyone brings in, to what everyone understands about marketing at a very basic level. It's trying to get somebody to convince somebody to buy your stuff, essentially. And if that's how you approach it, you're not going to get very far, because there's a fundamental lack of understanding that goes beyond what you have to offer and trying to get someone to take that from you. You're trying to give it out and you're trying to get someone to take that from you. So shifting your perception of what marketing is from I'm selling something to I have something of value for you, another person, my audience, and I would like to communicate why I think that's of value to you. And if you approach it that way, your strategy, your overall strategy, sort of formulates around the specific type of people that you're going after.
Right on. That's interesting. Okay, so not I'm trying to sell something, but rather I have something of value. Let me tell you why it's valuable to you. Now, you said something very specific at the end there, where you are marketing this to your audience. You use the phrase your audience. How do you find your audience versus the audience of the world,
Yep. Definitely. And that's the main question of marketing, is trying to define that. That's what I work with my clients all the time, because oftentimes you see this broad scope of what they think their audience is. Well, all right, it's people that like these certain things, and that's it. That's who we're going to market to. But it's in working to find the precision, defining all the demographics, sure, but going beyond that and looking at the behavior coupled with the demographics and things like that, where you start to understand who people really are and how they operate in mass, and finding a small piece of that to latch onto, to really convince, and then spread the word from there. Like I said, it's that precision of it to really define the persona, is what we call it, of your audience. It's all of the common characteristics that are really going to speak to the people that you're looking to market to.
Now, in today's day and age, everyone has access to social media, and most things are marketed through social media, from what I can tell, versus the old days where it was almost exclusively radio, TV, and billboard or whatever. So with this new world where everybody can market themselves on their own, and yet you have folks like yourself with an expertise in actual marketing and the science behind it, the psychology behind it even. What's how does one harness this social media thing to do what you're talking about? How do we figure out these figures and get down to the nitty-gritty on our own, or do we have to rely on marketers such as yourselves at an actual company? Is there a bridge between the two?
This is definitely stuff that can be done on your own. Marketing in its essence isn't overly complicated. You are, at the end of the day, trying to sell a product, sure, but it's in the way you communicate it. And I think artists, and especially authors, have a little bit of an advantage because they're constantly writing, they're constantly communicating, whether it's to other characters in your book, whether it's to yourself as the narrator of this overall story. There's communication happening constantly, and you're constantly developing that skill. So when you understand your audience, you're going to know how to communicate to them, and you're going to be able to write the words out. You're going to be able to come up with the strategy that you really need. And with social media, it's the great equalizer between an independent artist and a big conglomerate. The conglomerates have to be on social media. You're seeing it more and more these days, where brands are establishing a social media presence, and it's not necessarily a presence of the company. They're creating a personality for their brand. The biggest example that everyone's probably familiar with is Wendy's. They, at some point, someone decided to make their Twitter handle hilarious and me just roast people left and right all day. And it has translated to a boom for sales in Wendy's, So social media is a tool to accomplish.
I follow Wendy's.
There you go. The social media is a tool to accomplish the most successful bit of marketing you can do, which is word of mouth. It has been constant throughout the entire history of marketing that the most powerful way to increase sales, to get awareness of your product out there, is through word of mouth. It's from people who have experienced what you have offered and are telling other people that it is worthwhile. Because at the end of the day, like companies, we're all risk averse. We don't want to give up money to something that's going to be disappointing in the end. So if you have someone that you trust telling you, well, this is worthwhile, you should put your money towards it, it's easier for you to let go of that little bit of cash. And that's what social media helps us accomplish, because you can build communities, global communities of people that you would never meet in your life, but have the same interests and are looking at the same type of things. And you can talk to them and you can see what have they gone and bought, what are they consuming, and let's see if that's something that I would want or need. So social media is a powerful tool, and there are countless resources that are available for free with just searching around and exploring and analyzing what people are doing, what brands are doing, what seems to work for people. And you can come up with it all on your own.
Man, that's bananas. I love the great equalizer because I found that in, especially starting this whole thing out, I was looking at everyone who came before me and had done it, everybody who had found success in social media in order to publish their books, etc. And it's crazy because like you have big corporations like the Wendy's example, and you can go to their page and see how many followers they have. And then you might go over to, some girl who shakes her booty on Instagram once a day, every day, and she has just as many followers as the giant conglomerate. You know what I'm saying? Like the great equalizer, right? Like whoever wants what you are slinging, yeah, they're going to find you and they're going to follow you.
Exactly. And those conglomerates are taking note of that. And that's why they sponsor influencers. That's why they pay them big money to hawk their products, because an individual has gone and done the work to gather a very specific audience, and conglomerates give them a little bit of cash. And just like that, they've got a nice big chunk of potential customers right there.
And that's so bananas to me because it must have changed the entire game, because back in the day, again, you had a very limited set of ways to market things. TV was the big one. But even if you're marketing stuff on TV, if it's a local station, you're only marketing to a local area. If it's a major network, you might be marketing to the entire country, but again, that's one country. Whereas now, a single person can market to the entire planet with the internet.
Yep.
And so that's got to be bananas, because I remember when all this stuff started with Twitter, especially, it was just people telling each other where they were having a sandwich so that they could meet up and stuff. You know, now like revolutions are being fought with Twitter. So like everything has just grown to this insane level, and I've seen corporations start coming into social media once they saw everybody else flourishing with it, and they probably saw their numbers going down as far as like TV and everything. People are streaming more.
Like there's still advertising in TV. You know, advertise anytime there's an opportunity to advertise. The companies are going to try and advertise it, but the effectiveness of that type of advertising has been diminishing. That's why they all need to be on social media. That's why they all need to establish a presence. They need to reinforce what their brand stands for and create that sort of personality that people can interact with.
Man, that's awesome. And it's so trippy about the influencers, as we call them now, right? These popular people on the internet, which is really all it is. You think back to high school, they're the popular kids. And the popular kids are now having money thrown at them to advertise stuff as though they were famous celebrities who you used to hire for commercials and whatnot. Now it's influencers.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
And celebrities are becoming influencers in their own right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, every time I see an actor open up a YouTube channel, I'm always like taken aback by it a little bit. I'm like, what? You don't need to why are you doing this? Like, they do need to do it.
Yep.
That's bananas. Okay, so because we're talking mostly to authors, writers, etc. on this channel, I would like to sort of focus our attention on that particular career and marketing that particular career. Now, I myself, when I first started this author platform, I launched the website, the YouTube channel, the podcast, the Facebook, the Instagram, the Twitter, the Tumblr, all on the same day, live. And I was like, no problem. I'm going to have content up on each thing every day. This is going to be awesome. And then it's like, where the hell do I find the time to do all this shit and still write and take care of two kids who like to eat and have a roof over their heads for some reason? It's so much work. So I eventually had to condense it way, way down. And so now, social media wise, I'm mostly just on Instagram. I have a Facebook page that everything gets like duplicated onto, but I don't really do anything special on it. It's mostly Instagram and then YouTube. Now, you in the past have mentioned to me, actually, I believe it was your brother on your behalf, explaining that the best way to go about it is to create a major piece of content and then chop that bad boy up into pieces and distribute those pieces amongst all the other platforms. Can you talk a little bit about that? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. I know what you're referring to, and it comes from Gary Vee, who's basically the businessman's guru, but he's very down to earth and approachable. So the regular folk fall in love with him too, and he's very inspirational for all types of people. He's just a really savvy businessman, and he knows what he's talking about. So it's a content strategy that he explains it as sort of having a sort of showcase piece of content, and when you have that, you have the content for all the other little bits that can build anticipation for that big piece of content. So if you think of it as, let's say we're talking about a YouTube show, the main showcase piece of it is going to be that video that goes up Thursday at 5 p.m., whatever. That's the big showcase. But you want to entice people to come watch it when it airs within that first day. However, share it with their friends after they've watched it, all that jazz. So you can take pieces of that video, sort of like the highlights, or the pieces of it where there's something exciting happening, and have that be a smaller piece of content that you put on your social media, you put on Instagram, little video for Snapchat, maybe, what have you, little picture with captions on Facebook. You can repurpose stuff that you're already creating and produce the overwhelming amount of your content that leads up to that main showpiece. So that's, sort of the basics of that strategy, because it's taking the work that you've already done, and it's not necessarily making you do a ton more. You're adding a little bit more just to enhance that little feature that you're going to have at the end. So for authors, your feature is going to be the book. And for you guys, it's going to be hype built over a long time because you got to write that book, and it takes a long time to write that book. But along the way, you're going to be writing really cool stuff, and you're going to be coming up with really awesome concepts. And those are the nuggets that you can share to, in part, identify an audience that's interested in it, because along the way you're building that, the people that are continuing to come back to watch your content, watch your live streams, look at the concept artwork that you're sharing for potential book covers or something like that, the little snippets from the book itself that people can read and find it compelling and interesting. Is like, oh, is this a mystery that I'm interested in following and seeing what happens? You're doing the work of identifying your audience right there, just by simply writing the book that you want to write and sharing pieces of it to the world.
Now, you're talking about the book being the major content piece, but as you're writing it and trying to build hype for it, like I'm trying to do with my own, where I'm not done with the first draft yet, but I have a teaser trailer on my freaking channel. The idea of sharing pieces of the book is a little scary to me. But the way that I have found a way around it is to create these things sort of inspired by it. So my Instagram feed, for example, when I put up a new image that isn't advertising a live stream or a video or anything like that, when I'm putting up an original piece of content just for Instagram, it's usually an image that I've turned into a little piece of artwork, and I'm using it because it represents something from the story, a scene, a character, an idea, a theme. And, I write a little caption or whatever for it, and I put that up. But it's not a direct pull from the book itself. It's not a direct quote from the book itself. I'm not giving spoilers of any kind. If anything, I'm teasing things like, oh, what's this about? Now, for those of us who are marketing our books through either Instagram or YouTube or both, as is often the case, we have to put up videos on a pretty regular basis. Now we're talking about a book that we're writing, so there's not a lot of visual content that we can share from that. So coming at it from a marketing standpoint, you're trying to market a book that isn't finished yet on YouTube and Instagram. How would you approach such a task? Like what kind of content are you looking for in that?
So what you're doing is great. And the explanation I gave before, it's not to discourage you from doing that, but taking what you're doing, you're actually doing the strategy that I laid out before, because you're giving the essence of your book in those types of posts, where it's an image that inspires you, an image that evokes a scene that is in your book. And I completely understand with artists and authors, especially, not wanting to give away a lot of the content that's in your book, because you really do have to protect that intellectual property for sure. And it's very, very personal to you. So you want to protect it and guard it. So giving that bit of the essence of the book, or what it's about, what you've seen out in the world that has inspired you to write any particular portion of it, or the overall book, things like that, that's going to be compelling to your audience as well, because book readers understand that from their authors. They're in tune with that particular method of building hype and anticipation for a story. And with art in general, it's a very unconventional product. It's something that when you get into it, you're getting into a world that is saturated with very similar products, but the capacity to consume those products never goes away. We all want stories. We all want new stories. And we're constantly trying to find that new story that's going to blow us away. And, as authors, that is a goal that you're always going to want to try and achieve. Even the most seasoned of authors are going to continue to write and continue to pursue more stories that they can tell. And they've built an audience that's going to want to consume those stories. Completely understand not wanting to give, I'm not saying take page 12 and put that online right now, because it has a really cool line that I helped you write. I'm not saying anything like that, but you want people to understand what your story is going to be about, and give them the pieces of it that's going to compel them to want to explore more, find out more information about this book, find out when it's gonna drop, and then start following your journey to that end product. And as far as what you're doing here, this live stream, you can consider that as a showcase piece.
Yeah.
Because you also have to build up hype for the live stream, trying to get people to join live, trying to get people to come watch the stream after it airs and it's on YouTube and they can access it. That is a showpiece in and of itself, and you're building towards a grander thing. So it's not like the strategy is only for this one particular product. You can have many showcase pieces along the way to your ultimate goal.
Brilliant. Right on. So, dude, when it comes to books then, and we've got in this conversation, we've established an author who is advertising himself or herself, not through a corporation, but through their own social media. They've got stuff on YouTube, they've got stuff on Instagram. I know that you mentioned before finding your audience, and I know that different audiences tend to sort of flock to different platforms, social media platforms. And so, in your opinion, how spread out should one be exactly? Should one focus their attention just on the one that works, like I'm doing with Instagram, because that's the one that worked for me? Is it a detriment to us to not spread ourselves across all of them, at least in some capacity? Like how much engagement would you say is ideal here?
Yeah. especially for an independent author who might not have all the time in the world. They don't have necessarily have the bandwidth to essentially be their own content social media manager. Essentially, to start, for sure, focus on the one that you're finding success with, or the one that, if you've done research, seems to be the avenue most authors take. But I would say that you are limiting yourself if that's the only thing that you do. If that's the only thing that you set out to do, is just find the one social media platform. For sure, I'll do that, and then just focus all my energy there, because you're then neglecting members of your audience that don't know they want to be a part of your audience. A lot of the time, people come to a new book or something like that in a very serendipitous way of just, oh, there's a targeted ad or just a random ad. I've never heard of this thing before. I don't know who this author is, but the synopsis looked kind of interesting. Maybe I should check it out.
Or it's got a cool cover or whatever.
Exactly. And then at the same time, you're kind of playing around with your strategy. And in the very specific email marketing world, we have something that's called A/B testing, where a piece of your audience gets one message, another piece of your audience gets the same message but tweets slightly differently, and then you see which one performs better. And then whichever one does is the winner. Then you change something else very slightly, and then that way your content continues to grow and it morphs into the very best version of your content strategy. So focus on what is definitely being successful, but try and find what might be successful in an unconventional way, because that way you'll distinguish yourself from other authors. If every author is doing the exact same strategy, then there's, you've got a ton of marbles, but no bags to hold it in, and stuff gets lost. So if you can find maybe an unconventional way of doing something, or just happen to reach other people that are going to follow you on your main social media, that's all good best practice to try and sort of build that audience along the way as you're writing your story.
Man, so in reaching out through all these different platforms, as you said, you're doing yourself a disservice not being on as many of them as possible, and kind of, because you said you would be missing out on the audience that doesn't know they want to be your audience. That really hit me. And it's this idea of, like, I think I know what kind of audience I want for my book, or what kind of audience would enjoy my book. I know that my book has martial arts in it, a serial killer, sci-fi stuff, fantasy stuff, drug stuff, and religion stuff, right? So I'm using that knowledge of what's in there and knowing that these are all different sort of communities, so to speak, right? I'm trying to target each of them, letting them know, hey guys, you like this kind of stuff? You're going to find it in my book. When it's done and it comes out, you will most likely enjoy my book because it has something that you like in there. But I'm not thinking about the audience that doesn't know they want to be my audience. And therefore, the audience that I don't know is going to be my audience. And I was talking to Nina Moreno 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about, at one point, going to like book signings and conventions and stuff like that, and the idea of seeing who your audience is for the first time. Like actually looking out to a sea of faces and being like, oh, that's who reads my stuff?
Exactly.
You know,
You're
and
like, why are you here?
that's really interesting. I'm very anxious to see who actually starts showing up for my stuff because I think that's gonna be
Yeah,
very telling.
I actually have a great example of this.
Hit me.
A couple years ago, there was the Legend of Zelda Symphony touring around the globe. And I went to every single show that I could go to whenever they did it. Like the first one I went to was in Toronto. The second one I went to was in Rochester. And then they finally did it in my hometown of Buffalo, New York with my Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra that I've loved since I was a kid. And I went full out, did the VIP so I could meet the conductor afterwards. And speaking with her about the concert, she was blown away by how many people were there that would never have gone to the Philharmonic for any reason, just because it was the Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
So there was an audience that the BPO had never imagined would fill their seats. And here were a bunch of people cosplaying as Zelda, as Link. I showed up with a suit with all of the medallions from Ocarina of Time and the Wind Waker. And we had a blast. And the orchestra had a ton of fun playing that kind of music. So at some point, somebody thought it was a good idea. It was like, well, we have this great music. Why don't we just create a concert around it and let orchestras from around the world play it?
Yeah.
And people showed up en masse to go see.
Yeah. Dude, I've always wanted to see that show.
It's great.
You went how many times? 3?
3 times. And I will go again.
Worth it every time.
Worth it every time. They changed it up each time too, so it was awesome. I've probably heard every piece of Zelda music that has ever been created in those 3 shows because they would do medleys from all the games.
I'm just geeking up about the idea of going to one of those places for the symphony. But that's such a good example, man. Like having all these cosplayers in the Philharmonic, like that's awesome. That makes me smile. All right. Was the conductor using the Wind Waker baton?
Yep. Yep. She went out there. She was about to start. She's like, hang on. Went through her notes, brought out the Wind Waker, shut the house down.
Oh my God. I don't think people understand how much I'm geeking out right now. That's crazy. Okay. All right, man. So what are some common questions that people throw at you regularly? Stuff that you're finding that people are very commonly wondering about in marketing their own stuff. I'm asking you more of like a spitfire round kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Anything that we might not have covered yet that you think is very important or that at least is a very popular question?
Yeah, honestly, I think we covered pretty much the basics of what people want to know. Probably the most common is where do I actually start? And that's up to you. Start where you're most comfortable. If there's a social media platform that you use regularly and you have intimate knowledge on how it operates, start there. See what happens, and then start learning about all the other social medias that maybe you don't really have an interest in personally in using, but that you understand has an advantage in terms of building your brand, building anticipation for your product, and trying to find a way to utilize it in that effort. It's marketing at the end of the day is really simple because you're just communicating with another person. Just boil it down to another person that you think you can help, whether it be entertaining them with a really compelling story or providing them some other kind of service. At the end of the day, you're just communicating to another person. That's pretty much it.
That's beautiful, man. Did you watch Mad Men?
I didn't.
Do you get that question a lot?
I do. I watched probably like the first couple episodes, and then just dropped it. But it's been in my queue for years of like something I should probably watch.
I've seen the whole first season, and I believe I've seen a few episodes of the second season, but I also sort of fell off of it. But in the first season, there is a now sort of infamous episode where Don Draper is having to come up with a marketing strategy for this thing they called a carousel, I believe, which was this like rotating contraption that held slides.
Yeah, I have seen that episode. That was a great scene.
It ends with the famous scene with his famous speech about what we're all looking for and what really matters and all this kind of stuff. And what was interesting to me watching that episode and watching that ending is that everybody gets very emotional with what he's talking about. But I'm sitting there going, that's what he wants. Like, he wants you to buy into what he's saying right now. I'm not sure that even he believes it. Like, he's telling you what you want to hear. He's doing a great job at it, and it's landing. But it's manipulation. Like, he's plucking your heartstrings. He's trying to get a read on your pulse.
Yeah, that's a.
What are
that's
your thoughts on that whole side of marketing?
That's a big stigma in marketing, and there's definitely marketers that operate in that sort of way that is a little bit sleazy and leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But for the most part, even if what you're seeing from Don Draper feels a little manipulative, he's telling a story that's compelling to people that are going to want to buy the product. And if the product delivers on their perception of it, then all right, he told them the truth. And if it doesn't, the product fails and they have to revamp their strategy. With marketing, the sort of way you communicate to your audience can be it can be a mix of three things, but generally is overwhelmingly one of three things, and it's either informative, it's I'm blanking on the third. It's informative, meaningful, or entertaining. And if you take away from this stream those three things: informative, meaningful, entertaining, and you start looking at all the advertisements that come up throughout your day and try to fit each of them into one of those three categories, you'll see how strategies form, because you can have something that's just plain entertaining. It makes absolutely no sense for the product that they're trying to sell, but it's hilarious. That's what you get with most of the Super Bowl commercials. They're a bunch of nonsense. They're a bunch of nonsense, and a lot of the time you don't know what they're selling until the very end of it. But if it's a very entertaining commercial and people start sharing it all over the world, then there's more awareness for your product. There's more interest in your product there. Stuff like new technology, they tend to have to be more informative because you are introducing something that the world hasn't ever seen. So an example in my case would be a haptic vest, which takes your music, transforms it into feeling in your body when you're wearing this vest, which I've never heard of before in my life. But this commercial came up, it explained what this product does, and then showed me people using it and reacting to it, and it was very compelling. It was very interesting. So then I went in, looked at the information that they have on their website about this particular product and how it works, and I bought one because it's cool. And then it works phenomenally. I have stood in the presence of God and felt his terrifyingly loving embrace.
I'm blown away by this.
It's pretty awesome.
You just dropped an atomic bomb on my life, bro. Like, wait a minute.
We'll talk about post show. We'll talk about that. You know, and sign up for the membership, whatever. But yeah, so that the third one, meaningful.
Yeah,
that's sort of a wheelhouse that artists and authors can find themselves in, because at the end of the day, you want to share a story that's going to be impactful to the reader, that they're going to either find out a little bit of your worldview in the way that you form your stories, or that it's going to be a story that fits into their mold of how they see reality, or it's going to reveal something that they never thought about before in their world. So yeah, those three categories are pretty much where all sorts of marketing and advertising fall into.
informative, entertaining, and meaningful. 3 things to aim for when marketing your products. That's the big takeaway today. I like it, man. Your answers are so broad that you cover so much area that it's hard for me to know where to go next. But I feel like I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing with marketing, is that it's the most fluid of any business discipline, because there's never going to be a straightforward way of accomplishing your marketing goals. It's creative in and of itself. You can find new ways to market to people.
It's a lot of trial and error.
Exactly. And you know, where in accounting, there's a very specific way that you have to do accounting, or else you get in trouble. With marketing, you can do anything. You can try pretty much anything with marketing and find out if it's going to be successful in your ultimate goal.
So be brave. Try different things. See if you can find an audience or help an audience find you that didn't know that they wanted you.
Start broad and find that precision.
Right on, man. That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Very helpful. Okay. I am going to take a moment then to sort of advertise next month's live streams here, and let people know what's coming up in April, because you are the grand finale for March. We have had 4 very successful live stream Sundays in a row here. Very informative, very educational, very entertaining, and hopefully very meaningful as well. My internet is super slow, so bear with me. But the first Sunday in April is Easter Sunday, and so we're going to take that Sunday off. No live stream Sunday that week. But because we are missing that one, there is a bonus live stream this month, in the month of April. So first, we're going to have an introduction to world building on the second Sunday. And the playlist is coming up, so I can share the dates. And then after that introduction to world building, we're going to have the bonus episode, which is going to be on a Tuesday rather than a Sunday. And that's going to be with a representative from Greenleaf Book Group, who is going to talk to us about hybrid publishing, which is really interesting because you have, for the most part, 2 camps of authors: the traditionally published and the self-published or indie author, right? And we tend to be 2 very different kinds of authors: the kind who are very, determined to go through the traditional publishing, and they'll write many books before any one gets published, and they have to, give up certain controls to the publishing company, etc. But the publishing company is handling things, right? So there's that. And then you have the indie authors, the self-published ones who do everything themselves, most of the desire to hang on to control over their creative process and their project, and not relinquish control or a large amount of their profits. So Green is this hybrid of the two, where their business model is to let the writers maintain creative control, maintain their creative rights of their project, but they handle all the publishing stuff. They'll set you up with editors, and they'll, pay for the printing and all that kind of stuff. So a little of the traditional and of the non. So again, we're starting with Charlie Dorset on the 11th of April for Introduction to World Building. Then we're going to go to the bonus live stream on Tuesday the 13th, still at 4 p.m. And that's with Kesley Smith from Greenleaf Book Group. The following Sunday, the 18th, we have a live stream with my good friend Stephanie Strathis. And she works for the State Department and has lived in over 5 countries over the last few years. And so she's going to come on during the month of world building, that is April, and she's going to talk to us about all the different kinds of cultures and political structures and governments and religions and all languages, everything that she sort of encounters out there in the rest of the world for those of us who don't get to travel very much. And we're going to hopefully draw a lot of insight from her that we can throw into our world building when we're creating new worlds. And then we are going to end the month with a roundtable discussion, again on world building, but more of a just kind of a geek out gathering of a bunch of different authors. I'm going to have 5 different guests on that day. We're going to have Adam Gaffin, R.K. Gold, A.R. Mirabal, Tara A. Lake, and the best handle on YouTube, Glory Writes the Blues. And I hope that everybody shows up for all of these. The playlist is on my channel. You guys can pull it up, take a look at it anytime. Set reminders like so. And that way you'll get an alert when we go live that day, and you won't miss it. And then we're going to get into May. But we're going to hold off on that. Dude, let's geek out for a little while.
Let's do it. It's my favorite thing to do.
What, if any, video games have you been playing lately?
Well, if we're going by the most recent one, I have been playing through Untitled Goose Game, which is a little indie masterpiece that is hilarious, where you play as a goose and you are just a menace to this little village. And it's just hilarious. And it's essentially a puzzle game, because each level, it's just a different area of this town, and you have to just wreak havoc on
As a
this
goose.
poor soul as a goose. You can honk.
What kind of havoc can a goose wreak?
Just like if you're messing with the gardener, and you can pull out his carrots from there, and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's got to put them in a basket. You steal his hat. It's wild. It is just hilarious and an absolute joy to play. So I've been playing that. My next one will probably be God of War, which is a few years old now, but I have not.
Oh, the first one, the original?
Not the original, the one that the sort of like continuation / reboot of the franchise for the PS4. just because that one's at the top of everyone's list. So I'll do that one, and then I've got Horizon Zero Dawn as well. I'm behind on my games. I'm not the most up to date gamer, but I eventually get to stuff.
Yeah, I've always been more of a Nintendo guy myself. I'm not, I've never owned a PlayStation. I occasionally borrow my sister's if I feel like playing The Last of Us or one of the Arkham games.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm a Nintendo guy.
Yeah, those were my favorite games for the PS4. The reason that I bought the PS4 was for the Arkham game specifically.
And I've only played Arkham Asylum and Arkham Origins. I have not played City or Night. But I hear that Night is the big one.
It is the big one.
Yeah.
It's real good stuff. And The Last of Us 2. The Last of Us Part 2.
I haven't played that one yet.
I played that one when it came out. That was one that I was hyped for.
Did it hit you? Did it wreck you?
It wrecked me.
Oh.
I went into it. I posted it like, I'm so hyped for this game. This is the reason I took 10 days off of work. I got into it like an hour into it, and I was like, I don't want to play this game anymore. It is intense, but I mean, what a tremendous game it is.
Dude, why are we such masochists? Like, why do we enjoy these things that like destroy our souls, bro? Like,
we want to feel. We need to understand how to feel.
Is that what it is?
That's what stories help us to do. We get to experience feelings,
bro. Because, dude, The Last of Us, like the first one, when I got to the end, I was crying, bro. Like,
that first one, I played the prologue and then stopped playing it for a year. I was like, nope. I'm not mentally mature enough for this right now.
I can't handle this.
But yeah.
Oh man. And it's the same thing with movies and stuff, man. Like a lot of the movies that get me emotionally like stirred up will always do that. You know what I mean? Like once they poke that soft spot in me once, they never I can rewatch it over and over and I will always cry at the exact same time.
The exact same. Yeah, I'm like that with this Attack on Titan anime.
Oh my god, dude. I watched the first episode and I walked away from that one. I can't handle that.
I cannot watch that first episode without bawling my eyes out at the to the nanosecond, the exact moments each time. I'm like, nope. But it's such a good show.
Dude, I never got past the first episode. I saw that first one, and once the credits rolled at the end, I was like,
it's traumatic.
I think that's it for me, man.
It will always be traumatic.
I'm out.
Man, what a ride they are taking us on.
Dude, the big one lately for me has been Hamilton. The last 20 minutes of Hamilton, I'm just bawling the entire time. Every song, every line.
Good stuff in there.
And then, no matter how many times I rewatched it, I would cry at the same time. But then the crazy things started happening where I started crying at the beginning because of all the setup stuff.
Yeah, you know what's coming. You're like, man.
Dude, the first time that he says, I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. The first time he says that, I'm like,
you're gonna die. That's an incredible show. That is an incredible show,
dude. And then again, like my favorite thing in the world is Breaking Bad. I rewatch it over and over, and it never gets old. It never loses its potency with me. You get to Ozymandias, as you once so brilliantly put it, the episode that won television.
Yeah.
And dude, like, just tears.
That show is so good that I often think about the promo for the Ozymandias episode.
Yeah.
Where he's just reading
Ozymandias.
I constantly think about that.
I throw it on. I go on YouTube and I throw that on every once in a while and just watch and listen to it and watch it over me.
Yeah, I mean, talk about marketing. You know,
Yeah.
they took their snippets from the show. They have a poem that inspired parts of their story, and just created a promo for it. One of the most compelling promos, and you're just like, yep, I'm definitely gonna watch
Those
that episode.
shots of the desert, the hat in the sand, like
It's so
brilliant.
good, so good.
Have you gotten into Better Call Saul at all?
I have wanted to for so long, and it's another one of those that I keep putting off. But I mean, I'm definitely interested in it because he was one of the interesting characters of the Breaking Bad show, and you know,
A lot of people are turned off to it at first if they're big Breaking Bad fans because the first season doesn't feel very Breaking Bad.
I think I watched most of the first season, and I was
There's
enjoying it. It was
there's
very.
one big episode in that first season, which is the one that tells Mike's backstory. I believe it's episode 5, if I'm not mistaken. And that episode just focuses mostly on Mike, and therefore it's very Breaking Bad. So that episode feels familiar that way. But the rest of that season is a very different show from Breaking Bad. But what I like to let people know is that as the show progresses and it gets closer and closer to the events of Breaking Bad, it becomes more and more like that old show. More of the crime drama stuff starts coming in. Once you get Gus and his organization in there, Mike working for Gus, all of that stuff, very Breaking Bad, lots of cameos, lots of like origin stuff, really, really good stuff. But at the end of the day, man, it's about Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman, and Mike, and these two sort of sides of their world, and how at the end, I assume in the final season, they're going to be, more of a team, because that's how we met Mike in Breaking Bad, working for Saul.
Right.
So if you haven't, I know that you haven't dove in yet.
Yeah, and I mean, it's
Dive
it's
in,
just
man.
it's just worth it for the creators and the actors
Yeah.
that
Same
you
creative team,
fell in love with
people behind it. Yeah.
in Breaking Bad. Just checking out their work.
On the subject of Breaking Bad, Ozymandias, and it wrecking us emotionally, I brought this up on an episode of a podcast that I was a guest on last week. I believe it airs tomorrow on YouTube. I'll share that stuff on Instagram, and if anybody is interested. But I brought this up at the podcast, which is a book that Bryan Cranston wrote. I don't know if you've read it. It's called The Life in Parts. It's his
I've heard
autobiography.
about it. Yeah.
Phenomenal book. He has so many cool stories. And what he's done is he breaks the chapters up into focusing on different parts that he has played throughout his life, not necessarily in his career, but like the part of a son, the part of a father, the part of a husband, etc. But the first chapter, he opens with the part of Walter White. And from paragraph 1, you are inside the head of not Bryan Cranston, but Walter White during the scene where Jane dies.
Dang.
He puts you inside Walter's head.
That's
and you
rough.
know that Walter has no dialogue in that scene.
Yeah.
So he just takes you through everything that was going on in there. And then as you're reading that chapter, it transitions into, the scene cut, and he has to then go and shed Walter White off of him, to go home and be a normal person again. And he takes you through that process. But the most interesting thing about that chapter is that he expressed that the whole thing at the end where Walter's crying and everything, what was happening was Kristen Ritter, who plays Jane, is choking to death in front of him. And in Bryan Cranston's mind's eye, she morphed into his own daughter, who was the same age at the time. And he was watching his daughter die and doing nothing to stop it. And he broke down, bro. He just broke. And he just talks about that scene and how it wrecked him. And then what
Yeah,
that did was
artists
now
are
every time I
crazy.
watch it, I cry even more because I'm like, bro.
You understand what he's going through, yeah.
Yeah.
Artists, yeah.
So I highly
You're a crazy
recommend it, at
bunch.
least for that first chapter.
Yeah, for sure.
A
That
Life in
definitely
Parts.
sounds like
He's got
real
crazy
interesting
stories.
read.
He has a story in there about how he met Charles Manson once, and he has another story about how he was a suspect in a murder case, but he was like literally like states away, like his alibi was solid, but he was wanted for questioning and stuff. Like he's got some good stories.
That's awesome.
It's a good book. So then, what are you watching these days?
Well, Attack on Titan is in its final season, so I've been watching that. I mean,
I didn't know that it's
I got to get to that one soon. I think it aired already. But yeah, they're going through their final season. From time to time, I like to rewatch stuff. So I've watched a few old animes that I really like. Death Note, in particular, that one's always a really good one. That one, I think.
Did that get adapted to a live action recently?
No. No, it did not. Let's just start there. No, it did not get adapted.
It got butchered.
It got butchered. The only thing that was correct was what's his face? Green Goblin from the Raimi.
Willem Dafoe.
Yep. He was the Shinigami in it. And that is just the perfect cast of any movie in existence. But other than that, it was a mess, an absolute mess, and not worth anyone's time. So poor Willem Dafoe. But yeah, that's a really good like. It's very kind of like Sherlock versus Moriarty, but getting into their heads.
Right on.
Narrate the entire time of what they're doing to each other.
That's the anime, Death Note.
Death Note. It's super compelling. That one's a lot of fun.
I've been meaning to watch it. I haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah.
What's something that you didn't necessarily think you were gonna like, but because of some genius marketing, you had to give it a shot, and it turned out to be awesome?
That is a very good question. I think there's a movie called The Artist, which was from a few years ago, and I watched it when it was first released, but it wasn't necessarily one that I was interested going into originally. And it's not for any particular reason. It was just like one of those things where you're like, nah, whatever.
Yeah, not for me.
But it's a love letter to Hollywood. It's in black and white. It's done in a very old school style. And I was just blown away by it. It was awesome. And it tells a really simple story, but it gets the elements of it so right. And it was just a really, really good movie. And like for anyone that's interested in cinema or in storytelling in general, that's a really good one to have in your mind palace. Just something to have watched and to analyze and discuss. And it's a really, really good movie.
Right on. Excuse me. I'm gonna check that out. The Artist. I don't know if I've even heard of that. Who's in it? Anybody you know?
The only one I can think of that most people are going to recognize is John Goodman, but he plays a supporting character. Like even the main stars of it aren't. I think they both made their debut, maybe at least in Hollywood. I think the lead is a French actor, and this was like his debut.
Right on. So, you and I are both big Zelda fans, as evident by my nearly bursting into tears earlier when you were talking about going to the symphony. a huge point of contention with Zelda fans is the idea of an actual live action or even animated adaptation of The Legend of Zelda. Can it be done? Do you want it to get done?
I would love to do it. I
I
think
would too.
I mean, anyone who's a fan of it is going to want to do it, you know? And there are going to be those super hardcore people that are just going to be, you know, negative the entire way through because they're not going to get every single piece of the experience they had personally playing through these games
Sure.
in a show. And that's a
Which
really
is
hard thing to do.
it's probably the main downfall of most of these video game movies, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, has there ever been one that's knocked it out of the park for everybody? Like, I don't think so.
Definitely nothing that comes to mind, but like what people need to understand is that you can't expect the same experience
It's a
from
different
a
medium.
film, you know, adapting a video game. It's just not going to happen. But where Zelda has potential is in the fact that it's a very story driven series of games.
Yeah.
You can I think done right, you can build a really successful series out of it, where, you know, maybe take a season for one of the main titles of the game and just go explore that piece of it and try and translate it into a different medium. But yeah, you know, there's always going to be people that are just gonna not enjoy it for the simple fact that it doesn't have this specific character or this specific thing that you did in your game. Nobody else in the world has ever done.
Haters gonna hate. What about Link talking or not talking?
Link talks.
I agree. He does talk.
Link talks.
He
He
responds to characters all the time.
You are Link's voice in the game, and it's definitely a very cool aspect of the Zelda series that the main character doesn't speak, and I think they handled that really nicely in Breath of the Wild when they introduced voice acting into it. Which, fun story, I auditioned for the Zelda Universe dub of the game that they do regularly. I auditioned for a couple roles there, which we can talk about. But yeah, they the game itself handled the voice acting really well, and the fact that they left out a voice for Link.
They made it a point of the story. They made it a point that Zelda would mention that he's very quiet, and that she assumes it's because of the weight of being the hero on his shoulder.
I'm totally like that too. So it's clearly I'm the hero of Hyrule. All right.
Clearly. Dude, the first decent thing I ever wrote was my idea for a prologue for a Legend of Zelda series. And my idea was adapting Ocarina of Time, of course.
Of course.
And the prologue was, the scene is you have a view of Hyrule Field, castle in the distance, right? And at the bottom of the screen, a tree line where, you know, you're going to go into the Lost Woods, Korok Forest. Excuse me. And so the scene is, it's night, and you're hearing explosions, and you're seeing flashes and everything in the distance. Hyrule is in some state of chaos. There's some battle happening. And running through Hyrule Field towards the camera is a woman carrying something, and she's just running, you know. And the camera will follow her down as she enters the woods. And then we're with her as she's running through the woods. And she's leaving footprints in the ground, but then the ground is moving and shifting under her feet to erase her footprints behind her. And then the camera gets close enough to her to where we can hear her begging for sanctuary. Sanctuary, sanctuary. And she's running through the woods. And we follow her until she, you know, reaches the opening where there's the Deku tree, and she places a child at its roots and says his name is Link, and she dies. And then we go to black, and it's The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, it can be done.
Like I think that's how
It can
I
be
would
done.
open it. I would open it
It's
if it was
just
me.
Nintendo just needs to let it be done. Just give it to people who are gonna.
I almost want them to do like an animated series, you know,
Yeah,
like
I mean,
a what's
they
it called?
they're the mangas of the different games are
Yeah,
wildly
I bought
successful.
my sister
Like
one. I can't
they
remember which one. I think it
they
was.
could definitely do like an anime series of it.
I think it
And
was Twilight Princess that I bought her.
I read the first couple ones of Twilight Princess. Those are fun.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of like a Shigeru Miyamoto kind of dealy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, there was talk about Netflix adapting it recently, but I don't think
Yeah, I
anything
think
ever
that
happened with it.
that kind of fell through.
Hmm.
It sounds like
So, what parts did you audition for?
Daruk.
Okay.
That was probably the most fun one that I did. I auditioned for the Great Deku Tree as well, and then one of the Rito, Tiba. He's like the kind of like the modern day champion
Yeah.
from. But yeah, that was just having a bit of fun. It was fun
It's
to.
too bad there wasn't a Ganondorf in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
You could have
yeah,
auditioned for that.
yeah.
Because you do a badass Ganondorf. I've heard your Ganondorf.
It's a lot of fun.
Have you played Age of Calamity at all?
No, I haven't. Like the Hyrule Warriors games haven't really appealed to me all that much, but like this one in particular have like they kind of went into a story more so than some of the other games that series is known to do, which is pretty interesting, and I might check it out.
The Hyrule Warriors games never appealed to me at all. It's not what I want out of a Zelda game. You know, those like kind of hack and slash stuff.
Exactly.
But like you, I was very intrigued by this one because of the story. And more than that, when exploring Breath of the Wild's sorry, Jesus, while exploring Breath of the Wild's Hyrule, all of the ruins would always just make me wish for a version that I could play that had the ruins, you know, before they were ruined.
Yeah.
I would love to see this Hyrule when it was in its prime. And so that attracted me to Age of Calamity. And then I got it, I started playing it, and it turns out the story is huge. And thanks to Legend of Zelda, timey-wimey stuff, it's its own thing too. Like you think you know how it's going to end because Breath of the Wild showed you how it ends,
Right.
but because of timey-wimey stuff, it can surprise you with the ending. And so I'm playing Age of Calamity, and the hack and slash stuff through the hordes of enemies gets a little repetitive, but the missions are all centered around these great pieces of story and great like historical moments in that game that you don't even notice because it's my favorite one is the battle at Akala Citadel. So if you remember in the Northeast, there's that giant Citadel tower with the flying guardians around the top and the tower.
Yeah.
In this game, you know, you're storming that bad boy, and it's full of monsters, right? And so the battle begins with you playing as Mifa, driving the Divine Beast and just blasting fucking Lionels and all kinds of motherfuckers all over
That's
the place.
pretty cool.
It's bananas. And you're clearing the way for the ground troops, which consists of Link and any other characters you've chosen to play. Urbosa is my other favorite after Link. And so you go from piloting the Divine Beast to now you're Link on the ground. And Link is, you know, you're running through, you're hacking through all these bokoblins trying to get into the Citadel. And there's the Divine Beast blasting guardians out of your path. Like, it felt like Saving Private Ryan. Like you're running through and stuff is blasting all around you and you're just hacking through shit and
cool.
stuff is exploding and you look up and there's a divine beast and you look up and there's, you know, guardians and there's cannons from Akala and they're blasting stuff. It's this crazy war zone. It's insane. And then you go into Akala and you go all the way up the tower, just destroying everything in your path until you get to the top. It's bananas, bro.
Yeah, I think the divine beasts were one of my favorite aspects of the game.
That's funny because it's a lot of people's least favorite aspects of the game.
I have a bow tie of all of the divine beasts, like you know, like the loading screen icons of each.
Yeah,
I have a bow tie with all of them.
that's adorable.
Gots to do it.
Oh man,
That's how I go in interviews. I dress up professionally, but I have one piece of super nerdy flair.
I mean bow ties, man. I don't wear bow ties. I commend you for pulling that off.
You know how to tie them. Super classic.
Dude, thank you so much for being here today. Did you have anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't get to, or anything that you wanted to promote, or anything like that?
No, that was a really, really awesome discussion. Really good questions. So yeah, I had a fun time racking my brain with marketing talk.
I know that it's your job, so you know I wanted to also nerd out with you a little bit, so you didn't feel like you were working on a Sunday.
I mean, it's the job that I chose, so you know, there's enjoyment that I get out of it.
That's beautiful. Right on, dude. Thank you so much for being here. To everybody, thank you for coming. Enjoy the rewatch, and like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow me on Instagram. All my info's in the description below. And next Sunday, we are off for Easter Sunday, but come back the following Sunday, and we're going to get into the month of world building. Stick around, Adrian. We're going to talk after, and we are out.